The Shadowed Truth, Patsy Ramsey's health, family dynamics, and the lingering questions in the JonBenet case. First introduction, unveiling the layers of a profound event. On a quiet morning in Boulder, Colorado, December 26, 1996, the world awoke to a chilling mystery that would forever haunt the American consciousness. The Ramsey family home, once a symbol of idyllic suburban life, became a stage for a tragedy that defied easy explanation. A ransom note, stark and unsettling, shattered the peace, and with it, the presumed safety of a family. This was no ordinary crime. It was a profound violation of a domestic sanctuary, an incident whose ripples extended far beyond its immediate confines, touching upon the deepest human experiences of loss, memory, and public perception. Yet, beneath the surface of this profound grief, a different narrative began to emerge, a narrative woven from conflicting statements, unsettling inconsistencies, and a perplexing lack of clarity from within the very heart of the family itself. This journey delves into the intricate tapestry of human experience surrounding the JonBenet Ramsey case. We will peel back the layers of forensic detail, psychological responses, and societal reactions, all directly applied to the behaviors and statements of those closest to the tragedy. This is not a piece of apologetics, nor is it an attempt to provide definitive answers. Instead, it is an unflinching look at the dark side of deception, or perhaps the profound ambiguities that arise when the fabric of a family seems to unravel under the weight of an unsolved crime. We will examine why these inconsistencies appeared and continued to surface, casting a long, cold shadow of doubt, especially if the pervasive narrative of an unknown intruder is to be fully embraced. As we navigate these tender human vulnerabilities, allegorical and indirect language will be employed where discussions touch upon profound suffering, honoring the human dimension of these experiences with empathy and respect.
Got a shout out to my ace, Trace the Ace, before we go further. Thank you, Trace, once again for showing love, for coming through. Appreciate you for supporting the work. And I got to give you a big hug. Got to shake you a little bit. And hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing all right. And hope you enjoy this next video.
Second, the Unsettled Mind, Patsy's health, medication, and contradictory narratives. In the wake of unimaginable tragedy, the human mind and body are subjected to immense stress. For Patsy Ramsey, the events of December 26, 1996, were undoubtedly a cataclysmic shock. Yet, the narratives provided by John and Patsy concerning her emotional and medical state present a series of intriguing contradictions that compel us to look closer, hinting at a family fabric under immense internal strain. A John Ramsey's statements, a glimpse into unknowing. John Ramsey's statements often reflected a puzzling lack of detailed knowledge, or perhaps a subtle downplaying of Patsy's experiences with panic attacks and related medications. This unknowing painted a chilling portrait of a marital bond, perhaps less intimately connected than public perception might suggest, hinting at a quiet unraveling of shared reality. On that fateful morning, John vividly described Patsy's reaction to finding the ransom note. In his April 1997 interview, he recounted it as a scream of panic, a cry of his name that signaled something was badly wrong. John, April 19. This observation clearly indicated his immediate awareness of her overwhelming distress. Yet, when asked in that same April 1997 interview if Patsy had any trouble sleeping or took anything to aid sleep on the night of December 25th, John simply replied, "No." John, April 1997, 4. Years later, in a December 2001 deposition, when questioned about Patsy taking medication during the Christmas holidays leading up to JonBenet's death, John again stated, "Not to my knowledge." John, December 2001, 420. He further denied that she appeared rigid, nervous, or preoccupied in conversations during that period. John, December 2001, 421. This consistent lack of awareness about Patsy's pre-existing emotional or sleep-related struggles is psychologically revealing. It suggests a degree of emotional distance or compartmentalization that would inevitably impact their ability to present a truly unified and transparent account of the events. This psychological chasm within the marriage inevitably casts a shadow of doubt over the family's unified narrative, making the very idea of a shared, unblemished truth seem increasingly fragile. His knowledge of Patsy's post-murder medication also appeared limited and somewhat inconsistent. In a June 1998 interview, when asked about medications for cancer after effects, John initially stated he didn't think Patsy was on any medication at all apart from Prozac, which he knew she was on later. June 1998, 180. However, he then quickly recalled, well, yeah, she had taken Paxil for a while. They switched her to Prozac, which is similar. June 1998, 180. He then added that she had also taken Klonopin on an as-needed basis for a while. It was kind of a quick picker-upper, I guess. June 1998, 182. He generally noted that Patsy got her on medication fairly quickly after the murder, June 1998, 94. Perhaps the most striking instance of John's professed ignorance came in that June 1998 interview. When directly asked, "What do you know about Mrs. Ramsey having panic attacks?" John responded with a question of his own. I don't know what a panic attack is, I guess, for sure. How would you describe it? June 1998, 273rd. When pressed if it would be a big surprise to find out she did, he affirmed, yeah. That would June 1998, 274. He also specifically denied ever knowing Patsy to take Xanax. June 1998, 274. This series of statements paints a picture of a husband either genuinely unaware of or intentionally distancing himself from his wife's significant emotional and medical struggles. Psychologically, this could be a form of denial, a subconscious refusal to acknowledge a reality too painful or too complex to integrate. If an intruder was indeed the cause of their nightmare, why would one half of the couple seem so consistently in the dark about the other's fundamental state of well-being, particularly regarding anxiety and medication? This psychological chasm within the marriage inevitably casts a shadow of doubt over the family's unified narrative. Patsy Ramsey's statements, a more detailed admission. Patsy's own statements, in contrast to John's, provided a more direct and specific account of her medication use and its purpose, particularly after JonBenet's death. Her disclosures carried the weight of personal struggle, revealing a vulnerability that John's accounts seemed to gloss over, further highlighting the fissures in their shared reality. In an April 1997 interview, Patsy confirmed she was taking Paxil daily in the evenings, 30 milligrams, and had started it around February 1997, Patsy April 1997, 22-26. She also stated she was taking Ativan, likely Ativan lorazepam, as needed, simultaneously with Paxil, starting around February 1997, Patsy April 94. While the question to John referred to panic attacks, Patsy clarified that she took Ativan not for anxiety, but as needed, because she had just been missing JonBenet a lot lately, and that it kind of that takes the edge off a little bit. Patsy April 1997, 23-24. She typically took a half milligram a couple of times a week. Patsy April 1997, 24. She denied that these medications affected her thought process, memory, or judgment. Patsy April 1997, 25. Later, in an August 2000 interview, Patsy stated she was taking Zoloft for treatment of post-traumatic stress disorder. Patsy August 2319. Patsy's consistent and detailed admissions about her medication for anxiety and emotional distress, particularly after the murder, stand in stark contrast to John's professed ignorance or incomplete recollection. This divergence paints a picture of a family where even the most intimate personal struggles were not fully shared or acknowledged, contributing to a narrative of internal disarray rather than external threat. The psychological burden on Patsy, having to articulate these deeply personal details while her husband seemed unaware, would have been immense, creating a sense of isolation, even within their shared tragedy. C. The contradiction and its implications, unpacking the discrepancies. The source material reveals several points of profound contradiction or differing awareness between John and Patsy concerning her emotional and medical state, raising questions about the very transparency within their relationship, especially under the glare of an intense investigation. These discrepancies, like cracks in a foundation, suggest a family fabric under immense internal strain, a chilling narrative of disunity. First, consider the panic attacks terminology. John vividly described Patsy's scream of panic on December 26, 1996, John April 1997, 6, a raw, undeniable display of extreme distress. Yet, in June 1998, he claimed not to know what a panic attack was and expressed genuine surprise at the idea of Patsy having them. June 1998, 273 to 274. This wasn't just a communication gap, it hinted at a deeper emotional chasm, a silent betrayal of shared reality that would inevitably cast shadows over their joint narrative of the tragedy. Psychologically, this could suggest a form of denial or a profound emotional detachment on John's part, a coping mechanism that, while perhaps protective for him, served to further isolate Patsy in her suffering and create a disjointed family narrative. The perception of the family as a cohesive unit, vital in such a crisis, begins to crumble under the weight of such fundamental disagreements about Patsy's very emotional landscape. Second, the awareness of anxiety medication presents another layer of contradiction. John's initial denial of Patsy taking any medication other than Prozac, which came later, June 1998, 180, and his specific "not to my knowledge" regarding medication during the Christmas holidays, December 2001, 420, stands in stark contrast to Patsy's clear and consistent account of starting Paxil and Ativan in February 1997 to take the edge off due to grieving. Patsy, April 1997, 22 to 24, 26. While this specific medication use began after the murder, John's varying levels of recall regarding her anxiety-related prescriptions suggest a potential communication gap or a less detailed understanding of Patsy's specific medical and emotional struggles compared to her own admissions. If an intruder theory is to hold firm, these internal discrepancies about basic health and emotional states within the family unit become significant. They open a window into a relationship dynamic that, at least in these areas, appears less than fully transparent. This psychological disconnect between husband and wife, where one's inner turmoil is seemingly unknown to the other, creates a chilling narrative of a family, struggling not only with external tragedy, but with internal disunity, a silent betrayal of shared experience that constantly challenges the public's perception of their truth. Third, the fabric of relationships, compartmentalization, and communication gaps. The contradictions regarding Patsy's health are not isolated incidents. They seem to echo broader patterns of compartmentalization and communication gaps within the Ramsey household, particularly between John and Patsy, and between John and his children. These patterns, when viewed collectively, compel us to question the seamless narrative of a family united in its understanding of daily life and internal struggles, revealing a family fabric that was, in many ways, already fraying. A John and Patsy's relationship, a study in compartmentalized roles. The marital relationship between John and Patsy frequently highlights distinct, often separate, spheres of responsibility and awareness, contributing to perceived communication gaps that undermined their public image of a cohesive unit and hinted at a deeper disquiet within their shared existence. Consider household maintenance and responsibilities. John Ramsey consistently deferred knowledge about household management to Patsy. When questioned about an unrepaired basement window, he stated, "Patsy usually took care of those things, and I just rarely went to the basement, so it just, I guess, got overlooked." John April. This pattern, while perhaps born of convenience, painted a picture of a household where shared understanding was less a seamless tapestry and more a collection of separate threads. How could a family so divided in its daily awareness present a truly cohesive account of a night when every detail mattered? Psychologically, John's consistent deferral suggests a passive role in domestic oversight, potentially indicating a lack of engagement that could lead to genuine ignorance, or perhaps a subconscious distancing from responsibilities. This contributes to the chilling narrative of a family where vital information might have existed in silos, rather than being a shared, transparent reality. Similarly, regarding the extensive Christmas decorations, John simply commented, "Patsy always decorated the house, June 1998, 54. He referred to the storage of bikes and Christmas items in the basement as Patsy's department, June 1998, 62. John even admitted he was not even aware that Vern Lapel, hired by Patsy, was doing work on the house over Thanksgiving until after they were gone, stating, "That was just something she would take care of." June 1998, 195. These statements paint a picture of a household where, despite outward appearances, there was a significant division of labor that extended to a division of knowledge. This psychological compartmentalization, while seemingly efficient, could create blind spots, making it harder for either spouse to fully grasp the entirety of the home's vulnerabilities or events. This compartmentalization extended to daily routines and habits. John displayed limited awareness of Patsy's personal habits. He couldn't recall Patsy getting ready for bed at the same time as him, April 1997, 1. He speculated Patsy fell asleep first because she usually does, but I don't now. I didn't notice April 1997, 3. Even after Patsy's frantic scream upon finding the ransom note, John did not remember if she had makeup on or her hair brushed. April 1997, 16, and typically couldn't hear her moving around on her side of the room. April 1997, 16. Describing Patsy's habit with her clothes, he candidly said, "Where it lands is where it stays." June 1998, 81st. These details, seemingly minor, cumulatively suggest a lack of intimate observational knowledge about his spouse's daily life. Psychologically, this hints at a relationship where individual realities might have been quite separate, potentially leading to a fragmented understanding of events, a quiet disengagement that would become glaringly apparent under the microscope of an investigation. Their financial and business knowledge also showed clear divisions. Patsy admitted she just really don't know much about what goes on at work regarding John's business dealings at Access Graphics. Patsy, April 1997, 21. She suggested asking John about any problems with an employee named Tom Carson. Patsy, April 1997, 21. John also stated he didn't really have any involvement in the day-to-day business of Pastor J's. June 1998, 58. While not directly related to the crime, these further illustrate the distinct roles within their marriage, reinforcing the idea of separate spheres of knowledge, a common pattern in relationships that can, however, contribute to a lack of holistic awareness. Even their social circle and neighbors seem to fall into Patsy's purview. John frequently stated that Patsy would have more information about neighborhood children or families. June 1998, 67, 68. He also deferred to Patsy regarding whether Bob Wallace, who helped with decorating, had a key to the house. June 1998, 55. This further illustrates the compartmentalized nature of their lives, even in social interactions. In terms of decision-making dynamics during the crisis, John stated that when the ransom note specified not to call the police, Patsy voiced that instruction, but he said, "Call them anyway." June 1998, 160. However, John also stated that for tasks like making reservations, he would always to get Patsy to do it. "That's just the way our family works." Even then, under the circumstances, June 1998, 165. He was not concerned about Patsy making the 911 call while hysterical because she was said, "What can I do?" and I said, "Call the police." And she was standing by the phone, and it was how it happened. June 1998, 166. This paints a picture of Patsy perhaps initiating emotional responses, while John, even if not fully clued into her personal habits, stepped in for logistical decisions. Psychologically, this shows a dynamic where John may have taken on a more executive role in crisis, while Patsy's emotional state was more prominent, potentially leading to differing perceptions of their actions and a divergence in their immediate processing of the unfolding horror. The most telling point remains John's emotional detachment, gendered blind spot, or communication gaps regarding Patsy's health and emotional state. As we discussed in our original analysis of Patsy's health, John claimed he didn't know what a panic attack was, and would be surprised if Patsy experienced them. June 1998, 314, 315. He also denied ever knowing Patsy to take Xanax. June 1998, 315th. In December 2001, he stated he was not to my knowledge aware of Patsy taking medication during the Christmas holidays before JonBenet's death. December 2001, 393. This stands in direct contrast to Patsy's own admission of taking Paxil and Ativan as needed for anxiety panic post-murder. Patsy, April 1997, 22-24, 26. This apparent lack of intimate knowledge about his spouse's inner turmoil and medical needs, despite living together, suggests a profound emotional distance, a silent betrayal of shared experience that inevitably casts a shadow over their joint narrative of the tragedy. Psychologically, this could be a form of emotional avoidance, a subconscious mechanism to shield oneself from the full weight of a partner's struggles. But it also creates a stark image of a couple whose inner worlds were not fully intertwined, a chilling disjunction in their shared life. This apparent lack of intimate knowledge extended to sensitive medical issues concerning JonBenet as well. John stated that he didn't like to think about JonBenet's private difficulties and couldn't bear to know certain facts. June 1998, 178th. He attributed any treatment for this to kind of between Patsy and her, June 1998, 181st. He denied having discussions with Patsy about JonBenet's urinary tract infections. June 1998, 314. And stated he was unaware of Dr. Buff's notes regarding private difficulties, urotract infections, or limited private difficulties exams on JonBenet, again referring to it as kind of a mother-daughter thing. June 1998, 300th. This consistent deferral to Patsy for sensitive medical details about his daughter indicates a significant gendered blind spot or emotional distance. Psychologically, this could be a coping mechanism to avoid painful realities, a form of emotional compartmentalization where difficult truths are delegated to another. But it also paints a picture of a father less intimately involved in his daughter's sensitive health issues than one might expect, adding to the perplexing family dynamics and the sense of a fragmented parental understanding. Even the discussion of marital intimacy reveals a certain guardedness. When asked about his first marriage, John admitted it wasn't on a solid foundation to begin with, and they lacked that part of the marriage. June 1998, 266-267. He found a question about whether Patsy ever told him if they were intimate during her cancer treatment to be crude. John's book 574. He generally claimed to have no big secrets from Patsy and doubted she had any from him, reasoning that 18 years of marriage would make it pretty hard to keep secrets. June 1998, 310, 311. However, he acknowledged that his affair with Gloria Williams was ultimately not possible to keep secret. June 1998, 311. The very presence of an affair, despite claiming no secrets, is a contradiction in itself, suggesting a deeper undercurrent of hidden truths. Within the marital bond, a silent betrayal that predated the tragedy and perhaps conditioned the family to a certain level of concealed realities. This emotional compartmentalization seemed to persist even during crisis. Linda Arndt, the police officer, observed that she did not see John or Patsy interact with each other for a period after police arrived. Arndt report 526. John himself stated they were mentally vegetables and Patsy was sedated, and he wouldn't have made an observation of our behavior as to whether they gravitated to each other. June 1998, 228, 229, 230. He mentioned that Patsy was kept in the TV room, and they wouldn't let her go into that room right then, where JonBenet's body was. June 1998, 104, 105. Psychologically, this lack of mutual comfort or interaction in a moment of profound shared trauma is striking, suggesting a deep-seated emotional separation or a coping mechanism that led them to process grief in isolation. further fragmenting the family unit and making a unified, spontaneous response to crisis seem less likely. Perhaps one of the most chilling discrepancies emerges from the differing accounts of the 911 call. The 911 operator reported that Patsy's frantic tone immediately stopped, and it sounded like she said, "Okay, we've called the police, now what?" And that disturbed me. To me, it seemed rehearsed. Burke v. CBS, 436th. The operator also claimed to hear two voices in the room, maybe three different ones. Burke v. CBS, 430, which, if true, directly contradicts the Ramseys' assertion that Burke was asleep. Burke v. CBS, 410. Pseudo-experts later claimed to hear Patsy say, "What did you do?" and Burke asked, "What did you find?" On the enhanced 911 tape, Burke v. CBS 409, 412, 433, again directly contradicting the Ramsey statements about Burke being asleep. Burke v. CBS 410. These alleged discrepancies on the 911 call, a moment of profound crisis, invite deep scrutiny into the family's narrative and whether there was any intentional distancing or cover-up from the very beginning. Psychologically, the idea of a rehearsed response suggests a level of premeditation or a profound dissociation from the immediate horror, which would be deeply unsettling if true, and would represent a stark betrayal of the expected raw, unscripted grief. The idea of intentional distancing or a cover-up is indeed a dark theory that has been explored by some. The pseudo-experts in the Burke v. CBS document allege that the Ramseys distanced themselves from the investigation while at the same time claiming to the world through media appearances that they were fully cooperating. Burke v. CBS 467. They also highlight that John and Patsy did not sit for separate interviews with the police in order to rule them out as suspects, yet appeared on CNN. Burke v. CBS 450. The police also initially declined an offer for a joint interview, insisting on separate interviews with an open-ended time frame and Patsy going first. John's book 570. John attributes the Ramseys not cooperating with police headlines to his lawyer's decision to refuse interviews at the police station due to Patsy's medical condition. John's book 561. John also described hiring media consultants as the biggest mistake, but explained they were to keep us from having to deal with these people while responding with accurate information. John, June 1998, 150-151. John vehemently denies the theory that something accidental turned to panic and then a cover-up, calling it false theory and baloney. John, April 1997, 14. However, some experts hypothesize that within an hour of this crime being committed, there's probably a cover-up starting with whatever they did to the body and, certainly, the writing of this letter, the 911 call, everything that happened later, and that primarily, it's John and Patsy who were involved in that. Burke v. CBS 426. It was even suggested that the Ramsey family did not want law enforcement to resolve this case, and that's why it remains unsolved. Burke v. CBS 471. John expressed frustration that the police were so focused on the Ramseys that nothing else is getting looked at and believed their efforts were largely directed at, focusing on the troubling concerns about treatment of their daughter. John, June 1998, 41. John, April 1997, 13. Psychologically, this perceived distancing from the investigation, whether intentional or a consequence of legal advice and trauma, further eroded public trust and contributed to the narrative of a family with something to hide, a chilling portrait of isolation and perceived betrayal of the investigative process itself. B. John and Burke's relationship, a gap in knowledge and awareness. There are indications of John's limited involvement in Burke's daily care and a significant communication gap concerning Burke's potential awareness of events, suggesting a subtle but profound disconnect within the father-son bond that would later become a focal point of public scrutiny. In terms of communication gaps in daily life, John could not recall how Burke got dressed on the morning of December 26. John, April 1997, 7. He generally stated he didn't recall ever being awakened by the children at night, though they would sometimes come to their bed. John, June 1998, 82. During the crisis, his focus shifted to logistics. After JonBenet's body was found, John remembers discussing, Where should we take him? Burke, he needs to get out of here. He needs to be safe. June 1998, 100. While a natural concern, it is presented as a logistical, rather than an immediately emotional description of his interaction with Burke. Psychologically, this suggests a father who, under extreme duress, prioritized practicalities over direct emotional engagement with his surviving child, potentially reflecting a coping mechanism of intellectualization or a deep-seated habit of delegating emotional care to Patsy. This subtle disengagement, while perhaps not unusual in some family structures, became amplified in the context of the tragedy, contributing to the narrative of a family where emotional bonds were not always overtly expressed or shared. Perhaps the most glaring behavioral contradiction between John and Burke lies in the contradictory accounts of Burkes' awakening. John and Patsy consistently claimed Burke was sound asleep when checked after the ransom note was found. Burke v. CBS 466-410. However, the lawsuit document alleges that enhanced 911 audio reveals Burke's voice asking, "What did you find?" Burke v. CBS 409, 412, 433, directly contradicting the Ramseys' account. This stark divergence, a son's direct challenge to his father's memory of a solitary act, ripped a significant tear in the family's carefully constructed narrative. If John was alone, why did Burke recall being present? This wasn't a minor detail. It was a fundamental disagreement about a pivotal event, forcing observers to question the very foundation of their collective truth. Psychologically, this contradiction is deeply unsettling, suggesting either a profound memory distortion on the part of one or both parents, or a deliberate attempt to conceal Burke's involvement or awareness, a chilling possibility that further unravels the family's public image and hints at a deeper, unspoken understanding within the family unit. Burke's reaction to JonBenet's death also drew scrutiny. An expert stated that Burke never asked Detective Patterson, who interviewed maybe an hour after JonBenet was found, if his sister had been found, what happened to her? You know when they're going to get her back. Nothing about his sister. Burke v. CBS 463. This was interpreted by some pseudo-experts as Burke showing a lack of concern, implying he knew about a cover-up. Burke v. CBS 616-424. John, when asked why they didn't gravitate to each other, responded, "He wouldn't have made an observation of our behavior." June 1998, 230. However, John's book states, Burke seemed unable to face JonBenet's death. It was just too difficult for him to process at the time. John's book 560. Burke's perceived inappropriate emotional responses, such as chuckling during his Dr. Phil interview, were widely reported, leading to public speculation about his psychological state and potential involvement. Westward 4. Psychologically, such reactions can be a manifestation of trauma, a nervous tic, or a coping mechanism for overwhelming distress. But in the public eye, they were often interpreted as a chilling sign of something amiss, further contributing to the narrative of a family in disarray and fueling the dark whispers of internal secrets. See John and JonBenet's relationship, gaps in intimate knowledge. John's statements reveal gaps in his knowledge of JonBenet's daily life, personal habits, and some medical details, areas that Patsy was more privy to, suggesting a parental relationship with distinct, perhaps emotionally distant, boundaries that would later become points of public inquiry. In terms of personal habits and clothing, John could not recall with certainty what JonBenet went to sleep in on December 25, April 1997 4. He also stated he didn't feed JonBenet anything before bed, and was positive she was sound asleep. June 1998, 81. This contradicts the hypothesis that Patsy served JonBenet and Burke pineapple that night. Burke v. CBS 469. John found it unimaginable that a stranger could have gotten her up and fed her pineapple without her screaming. June 1998, 251. Psychologically, John's lack of recall about these intimate daily details, while perhaps common for a busy father, contributes to the sense of a fragmented family life, where the parents' individual realities did not always fully overlap. This subtle disengagement from the minutiae of his daughter's routine, when viewed against the backdrop of her death, became a point of quiet suspicion, hinting at a lack of intimate shared experience. Regarding physical observations, John stated he did not notice a heart drawn on JonBenet's hand on Christmas evening, despite being close enough to see it. June 1998, 344. He later described this information as very bizarre and found that something is amiss there. June 1998, 131, 132. He also did not recall seeing her draw on her hand in the year prior to her death. December 2001, 390. He also did not notice any injuries to her face or neck, or any complaints of pain. June 1998, 345. This lack of observation, while potentially explained by fatigue or distraction, contributes to the perception of a father who might have been less attuned to his daughter's physical state than one might expect, further fueling questions about the depth of their daily interactions and the extent of his awareness within his own home. John's apparent emotional disposition about JonBenet's travel habits also stood out. He noted that JonBenet just kind of went with the flow regarding trips, unlike Burke, who preferred to stay home. June 1998, 199. This seemingly innocuous detail, when viewed in the context of the larger narrative, subtly suggests a father who perhaps had a more generalized understanding of his children's personalities rather than a deeply nuanced one, reinforcing the idea of a certain emotional distance. Most notably, when it came to private difficulties, health issues, John was unaware of JonBenet's private difficulties, urotract infections, and limited private difficulties exams by her pediatrician, stating it was kind of a mother-daughter thing. June 1998, 300. He found discussions of her private difficulties difficult to bear. June 1998, 178. He also attributed any treatment for this to kind of between Patsy and her, June 1998, 181. This consistent deferral to Patsy for sensitive medical details about his daughter indicates a significant gendered blind spot or emotional distance. Psychologically, this could be a coping mechanism to avoid painful realities, a form of emotional compartmentalization where difficult truths are delegated to another, but it also paints a picture of a father less intimately involved in his daughter's sensitive health issues than one might expect, adding to the perplexing family dynamics and the sense of a fragmented parental understanding. This avoidance, while understandable from a human perspective, contributes to the unsettling narrative of a family where certain truths were too difficult to confront directly. Patsy and Burke's relationship, primary caregiver's awareness and protective instincts. Patsy's role as the primary caregiver often meant she was more aware of Burke's specific issues and behaviors, a dynamic that, in the shadow of tragedy, could be interpreted as a powerful, perhaps overwhelming, protective instinct, contributing to the chilling narrative of a family guarding its secrets, while John seemed less aware of Burke's bedwetting as a problem. June 1998, 182, 312, 313. Patsy was likely aware of Burke's history of scatological problems, including smearing feces on a bathroom wall and finding feces on a candy box in JonBenet's room. Behaviors reported by a housekeeper, Burke v. CBS, 464. This level of detailed awareness about Burke's private struggles highlights Patsy's deeply involved role as a mother, but also hints at the potential psychological burden of managing such issues, especially if they were kept from John. This hidden knowledge within the family, known to Patsy but seemingly not fully to John, further illustrates the fragmented nature of their shared reality. A particularly troubling interpretation emerged from a DSS interview. Patsy's statement, she would have nothing left to live for if she lost Burke, was interpreted by some as a motive for a cover-up. Burke v. CBS, 470th. This sentiment, while a raw expression of a mother's profound love and fear of unimaginable loss, casts a chilling shadow. Psychologically, such a powerful bond, when confronted with catastrophe, could lead to an overwhelming protective instinct, a desire to shield a child from any perceived harm, even the harsh glare of suspicion. This interpretation, whether accurate or not, contributes to the narrative of a family grappling with a hidden truth, where the depths of maternal devotion might be seen as a silent, powerful force shaping the unfolding drama. a potential act of profound, albeit misguided, family betrayal. Patsy and JonBenét's relationship, close involvement, and shared anxieties. This relationship appears to be characterized by close involvement, particularly in JonBenét's pageants and her early life, suggesting a bond that was both nurturing and, perhaps, intensely focused, creating a unique dynamic within the family. From John's perspective, Patsy generally handled the details of JonBenét's pageants. June 1998-49. He even admitted Patsy sometimes dragged him to pageants, and JonBenet was more insistent on going than Patsy sometimes. June 1998-223. Some critics suggested Patsy was living vicariously through JonBenet with the pageants, representing a huge investment of time, effort, and money. Burke v. CBS 468. Psychologically, this intense involvement could suggest a deep emotional connection, but also potentially a projection of Patsy's own aspirations onto her daughter, creating a dynamic that, while loving, might have been overwhelming for JonBenet at times. This intense focus, while a testament to Patsy's dedication, also highlights a potential pressure within the child's life, a pressure that could have contributed to underlying family tensions. Perhaps most tellingly, Patsy reportedly told her mother many times that JonBenet was so beautiful someone would kidnap her. Linda Arndt Report 522. This private conversation between Patsy and her mother suggests a shared sphere of concern and communication on this topic, distinct from John's involvement, and provides a haunting premonition of the actual tragedy. This shared anxiety reveals a mother deeply attuned to potential dangers, a psychological state that would have been catastrophically validated by the events of December 26th, further intensifying her trauma and potentially shaping her subsequent actions and statements. A house guest further stated that Patsy adored JonBenet. JonBenet Police Report 542, reinforcing the depth of this bond. This profound maternal connection, while beautiful, also hints at the immense psychological devastation Patsy would have experienced, which could have led to behaviors that, while rooted in grief, appeared inconsistent to outsiders. Other intra-family relationships, dispersed lives and shared bonds. John's relationships with his older children Beth, John Andrew, Melinda, were characterized by largely separate lives. He mentioned that his adult children, John Andrew and Melinda, took their private planes separately from Atlanta to Minneapolis, while he, Patsy, JonBenet, and Burke were planning to fly to Michigan. Linda Arndt Report 533. However, there were shared family traits, childhood issues. John noted that his older kids certainly did wet their beds, and described Melinda's bedwetting as a non-issue where she would join them in bed with clean undergarments. June 1998, 182, 314. His older children, John Andrew and Melinda, strongly denied any impropriety in the Ramsey family and expressed strong support for John's book, 573. These relationships, while supportive, highlight the generational and geographical distances within the extended family, further isolating the immediate Ramsey household in their crisis and reinforcing the idea that the core family unit was a world unto itself. Patsy's relationship with her mother and sisters seemed to be a strong support system. Patsy's mother would often come and stay with the children. June 1998, 179th. John also stated that Patsy and her mother were real close, and her mother provided a lot of support and compassion during Patsy's cancer treatment. June 1998, 202-203. They also engaged in shared activities, with Patsy's mother and sister accompanying Patsy and JonBenet on a mother-daughter trip to New York. June 1998, 144. This strong bond facilitated shared information, as Patsy was with her sisters when she saw a TV segment that angered her. June 1998, 285. This close-knit female support system provided a crucial emotional outlet for Patsy, but also meant that certain vulnerabilities and anxieties might have been shared within this circle, rather than with John, further contributing to the compartmentalization within the immediate family and the narrative of a family with distinct, perhaps hidden, internal dynamics. Overall, the extensive information above paints a picture of a household where, Despite outward appearances of a close family, there were clear areas of compartmentalization, particularly between John and Patsy regarding household management, the children's specific needs, and Patsy's emotional and medical struggles. John's frequent deferral of knowledge to Patsy, or outright denial, ignorance of certain issues, suggests emotional detachment or a gendered blind spot. The contradictory accounts of the 911 call and Burke's state, as well as the family's actions and public statements post-murder, also lend themselves to interpretations of communication gaps or even intentional distancing, particularly concerning the police investigation. These observations compel us to consider, if an intruder was truly responsible, why do these intimate family dynamics and the inconsistencies within them raise so many enduring questions, rather than simply presenting a united front against an external threat? This is the chilling narrative of a family fabric seemingly falling apart due to the persistent emergence of contradictions, inviting a deeper look into the dark side of deception. Fourth, the public narrative, media, speculation, and the human quest for meaning in the Ramsey case. The saga of the JonBenet Ramsey case unfolded not just within the private walls of their home, but also within the relentless glare of public scrutiny and media speculation. Society's engagement with stories of crime, particularly those involving domestic spaces and children, is a complex phenomenon driven by a fundamental human quest for meaning and control in the face of the inexplicable. A. The allure of true crime and its ethical shadows. The allure of true crime narratives stems from a deep-seated human need to comprehend the incomprehensible, to confront fears, and to draw clear lines between what is considered good and evil. UNESCO Report 22. These narratives satisfy a primal need to know, providing insights into criminal investigations, the workings of the justice system, and the motivations behind profound acts of harm. UNESCO Report 22. For many, consuming true crime offers a strategic element for personal preservation, allowing them to refine survival strategies and gain a sense of control by learning about the patterns and behaviors of those who might inflict harm. UNESCO Report 22. The public's intense fascination with the Ramsey case, fueled by the family's internal inconsistencies and the profound mystery, became a mirror reflecting societal anxieties about hidden dangers within the home, a chilling echo of their own vulnerabilities. However, the consumption of such narratives, especially when they touch upon the sanctity of domestic spaces, brings significant ethical considerations. One major concern is the distortion of danger. True crime stories often sensationalize external threats, such as serial killers, leading the public to focus on comparatively low-risk dangers. UNESCO Report 22. In stark contrast, research explicitly states that domestic spaces are often more dangerous than any poorly lit car park due to the high risk of harm by an intimate partner. UNESCO Report 22. This creates a significant disconnect between what society is conditioned to fear and where actual danger often resides, inadvertently masking the pervasive issue of domestic conflict and the quiet struggles that sometimes unfold behind closed doors. Furthermore, a disturbing aspect of this allure can be exploitation, where some individuals are drawn to these stories to experience dangerous worlds from a safe distance or simply to revel in the horrors. This exploitation of victims and their loved ones' profound suffering is a regularly denounced ethical concern. UNESCO Report 22nd. B. The media's kaleidoscope, shaping perceptions and fueling speculation. The media's influence on public perception of crime is immense and multifaceted. Both social media platforms and traditional news outlets contribute to the overrepresentation and sensationalism of crime, leading the public to perceive criminal activity as more prevalent and threatening than actual crime data, suggests Northwest College 2335. This phenomenon is often driven by financial incentives, as increased viewer engagement allows media outlets to raise advertising prices. Northwest College 23. This creates a self-reinforcing feedback loop. The public's inherent fascination with crime is exploited by media through sensationalism, which in turn amplifies public fear and anxiety, creating a demand for more such content, further distorting perception. The media, while seemingly providing information, acts as a powerful shaper of collective reality, often prioritizing engagement over accuracy. a chilling reflection of how public narratives can be manipulated. This dynamic also leads to biased portrayals and stereotyping. In high-profile cases like JonBenet Ramsey's, the media's focus on specific behaviors and perceived inconsistencies within the family's statements became a central part of the public narrative. For example, Burke Ramsey's interview on Dr. Phil, where he was observed to chuckle and grin inappropriately while discussing his sister. His death became a significant point of public discussion and speculation, as reported in various news sources, Westward 4. This perceived lack of appropriate emotion from Burke, whether due to trauma, personality, or other factors, fueled public curiosity and judgment, leading to accusations and lawsuits, Westward 4, GSU Cites 5. Similarly, details like the presence of pineapple in JonBenet's system and Burke's reported history of scatological problems and anger issues, including an instance where he struck JonBenet with a golf club, were widely reported and contributed to public theories about the family's involvement, GSU Cites 5. These specific behavioral details, amplified by media, profoundly influenced collective understanding and suspicion, demonstrating how the media's lens can distort reality and shape collective fear. The media's influence extends to legal processes, as extensive coverage can sway jury perception, potentially impacting trial outcomes, and making it challenging for defendants to receive a fair trial due to prejudicial reporting, Silver Legal 33. Moreover, biased reporting can either bolster public support for or fuel skepticism towards law enforcement, shaping collective attitudes towards the institutions of justice, Silver Legal 33. The combined effect of these factors highlights the media's kaleidoscope, distorting reality and shaping collective fear. This leads to a heightened sense of insecurity in society, even if actual crime rates are stable or declining. It can foster a climate of mistrust, influence policy decisions, for example, increased surveillance measures, and perpetuate harmful stereotypes. This calls for an ethical imperative for responsible journalism and media literacy, as the distorted lens of media can profoundly impact public discourse, legal processes, and the very sense of safety within a community. The human quest for meaning and control in the face of the inexplicable is inadvertently channeled into a system that can sensationalize and misrepresent, deepening societal anxieties rather than alleviating them. Furthermore, these observations reveal the unseen shadows, the discrepancy between perceived and actual danger. There is a significant disconnect between what society is conditioned to fear, often sensational, external threats, and where actual danger frequently resides, within the home. From known individuals, UNESCO Report 22. The media's portrayal of crime, often sensationalizing external violence, contributes to this misperception. This misdirection of fear can lead to a societal blind spot regarding the pervasive issue of domestic harm, which is often hidden behind closed doors. Anthropologically and sociologically, this reveals a profound societal challenge in acknowledging and addressing internal threats to the sanctuary of the home. The cultural narrative of the home as a safe space, while comforting, can inadvertently mask the realities of domestic conflict and the quiet struggles that sometimes unfold within the human spirit. This calls for a critical re-evaluation of societal priorities in crime prevention and victim support, shifting focus to the often unseen landscapes of danger, however uncomfortable they may be, and advocating for a more balanced and accurate portrayal of crime by media. Fifth conclusion, weaving threads of understanding. Our journey through the multi-dimensional landscape of domestic intrusion, particularly through the lens of the JonBenet Ramsey case, reveals a complex and deeply human tapestry. This exploration has meticulously drawn together the intricate threads of forensic detail, psychological and physiological responses, and cultural and societal dimensions, demonstrating that such an event is far more than a mere crime against property. It is a profound disruption that challenges our understanding of truth, memory, and the very nature of safety within the home. The forensic analysis, from the routine pathways of access to the silent testimony of trace evidence, provides the tangible framework for understanding how a sanctuary can be breached. Yet, as we've seen, the paradox of domestic security, where convenience often overrides stringent measures, and the inherent unreliability of human recollection under extreme duress underscore the critical role of objective physical evidence. The stark contrast between subjective accounts and forensic findings, such as the police test of the basement window, highlights the ongoing tension in investigations between human narrative and the silent, unyielding truth revealed by scientific scrutiny. The specific contradictions in the Ramsey family's accounts, particularly regarding the basement window entry and the garage door status, serve as poignant examples of how individual behaviors and memory can diverge under pressure, inviting deeper scrutiny into the very fabric of recollection. These inconsistencies, when viewed against the backdrop of an unsolved crime, compel us to ask, why do these discrepancies persist if an external intruder is truly to blame? This is the dark side of deception, where the truth becomes obscured by conflicting accounts and the silent story of the scene challenges the spoken one, leaving a chilling sense of unresolved mystery. Internally, the mind and body undergo profound transformations in the wake of such a violation. The shifting sands of memory, where vivid recollections can belie factual accuracy, and the brain's physiological remodeling under traumatic stress, illustrate that the suffering experienced is not merely psychological but deeply neurobiological. The spectrum of enduring distress, from anxiety and fear to the profound burdens of PTSD and CPTSD, underscores that the violation of home is an assault on the very core of an individual's being, reshaping their capacity for trust, emotional regulation, and social connection. These psychological and physiological responses are directly applicable to the Ramsey case, helping us to understand the family's behaviors and statements under immense pressure, and why their narratives might contain such perplexing inconsistencies, hinting at a family fabric that was already under immense internal strain. Collectively, society's response to domestic intrusion is filtered through deeply ingrained cultural interpretations of home, privacy, and security. The allure of true crime narratives, while fulfilling a human quest for meaning, is often exploited by media through sensationalism and biased portrayals, leading to a distorted public perception of danger and a heightened, often misplaced, collective fear. This perpetuates a societal blind spot regarding the often unseen struggles within domestic confines, where the most profound harms can unfold. The public's intense focus on the behaviors and inconsistencies of individuals involved in high-profile cases, often amplified by media coverage, demonstrates how collective narratives are shaped and how public judgment can be influenced by perceived behavioral anomalies, as vividly seen in the media's portrayal of the Ramsey family, further deepening the sense of public betrayal. In synthesis, a domestic intrusion is a profound violation that echoes through the individual psyche, altering memory, physiology, and emotional well-being, and ripples through the broader societal fabric, challenging notions of safety, privacy, and trust. The lasting effects, from the subtle shifts in daily habits to the deep scars of trauma, demand comprehensive and compassionate understanding. This report underscores the imperative for a compassionate, informed, and ethically sensitive discourse when confronting the complex tapestry of human experience in the face of profound disruption. It advocates for a societal approach that integrates scientific understanding of trauma and memory with a critical awareness of media influence and cultural biases, fostering a more just and empathetic response to those who navigate the aftermath of such profound violations. This includes a commitment to gentle language when discussing the most tender human vulnerabilities, ensuring that the narrative respects the delicate nature of existence and the quiet struggles that sometimes unfold within the human spirit, all while tying back to the specific details and persistent contradictions observed in the JonBenet Ramsey case, which continue to challenge a singular, simple explanation and leave the truth shrouded in a chilling veil of uncertainty. Which continue to challenge a singular, simple explanation and leave the truth shrouded in a chilling veil of uncertainty.